High Noon Leatherworks for another leather adventure, and today is going to be the second episode of making the knife sheath for the Civil War sword blade that was made into a knife with the deer antler. So last episode, if you missed that, go back and check that out. We made the pattern off of the knife, and today we're going to move on to the next step, and we're going to go ahead and get into the leather. So come on in and let's get started. Alright, so I've got my pattern that I made last episode. I found me a scrap piece of leather that's plenty big enough. I'm going to take my cheap giveaway ballpoint pen. That's what I like to use to make my drawings from my patterns to my leather. A lot of people may not do that, and that's fine. You can do whatever you like. I do this as a hobby because I love it, I enjoy it, and I like sharing it with you guys. I am definitely not an expert, and I don't profess to be an expert. I just love doing it. So I'll take my ballpoint pen, go around my pattern, come back down and do my lacing holes, and that way they'll be punched in the perfect location, just like in the pattern. So I'll set my pattern aside. There's my outline. I can go ahead and I'll probably put a new blade. These blades are fairly inexpensive, especially if you buy them in bulk. So I like to start with a new one anytime I cut out a new project. Just makes it go a lot smoother. So I'll follow that pattern line, and again, I like to take my time, especially if I have a new blade. If I take my time, especially going around large radiuses like this, I can get through the leather at the first cut, and if I keep turning my leather, it really helps me keep a straight line, helps me stay right on that pattern line that I drew. And then I like to keep my scraps out of the way, so I'll move those out of the way as I cut them off. And then any of that inked line that's left there, remember I kind of wanted a little small radius here so it wasn't square. So I'm going to work my way around that. The outside corners are much easier than the inside corners. In my opinion, anyway. Now you could take a punch, a round punch, and punch those. I might do that. But any of that inked line, I never finished what I was going to say. Any of that inked line that's left on there is going to come off when I bevel that. So the outside radiuses is not an issue. They're very easy to take your blade and go around, cut the square parts off. And then the inside radiuses are a little tougher. And I'll show you. Kind of clean that one up just a little bit. And then you could take a round punch, depending on the radius that you're looking for, and actually clean that up with a round punch. Depending on how sharp it is, you may not even need to hit it with a mallet or anything. You just do it by hand. I cleaned that right up. And then the outside radius is pretty simple. So I can go ahead now, do my punching, and I use an 1/8 inch punch. And I could just punch right on my ink marks. You can see my paper popping out from where I punched my poster board pattern in the last episode. And I am using a fairly hard piece of leather as a backer. Makes it a little easier to get through, and it helps to have a nice sharp punch. So there's one side. Turn it over. And you can move fairly quickly down the side. And as those waste pieces pop out, you can turn your punch, kind of aim those where you want them to go. But I try to keep them pushed to the back of my work area. They're easier to clean off of my workbench than they are to seem to get off the floor. Alright, so got one stuck in there. So there's all my holes punched for my lacing. And again, I'm using 1/8 inch lace. So I've got my piece of leather cut out. I've got my lacing holes made. Now I'm ready to do my beveling, clean my edges up, drop that with some jeweler's rouge, polish that tool up real nice. When you polish those up, it just glides over that leather. And remember, it's taken off any of that remaining ink mark from drawing out my pattern. And that's a fairly straight run right there on the strap. Come back down the other side. Go around that radius. And I found the key to that is let the tool do the work as you go around those radiuses, those inside radiuses like that. Because the harder you push, the more you can damage the edge of the leather. Alright, then we can flip this over and we'll do the back edge. And I've had several people comment about the way that I bevel both sides, especially when two pieces of leather are coming together. And that's just a personal preference. I know it's more work, but I just like the look of it. And all of the old period correct stuff that I have seen, like the original stuff, like I've bought some stuff that was original, and it was not squared off and sanded and finished like a lot of the newer stuff is today. So I just kind of like it that way. Again, that's personal preference. Alright, so there's my beveling. It's done. I just think it looks sharp. Fold that over. And let's put our knife in there and let's just see how close we are as far as the blade and remember that those lacing holes started out, I put them a little further out here. And it's going to be pretty close. I got to probably wet this down and flatten this back bone, this back edge where it folds over, so I can get it nice and flat. So I'll probably end up doing that. But for now, let's take a little bit of tap water on a sponge. And I'm just going to go around, hit the edges lightly. Let that set for a minute. I think what I'll do is I'll go ahead and wet this and put me a couple pieces of leather on there and some clamps with the knife in it, and then that way it'll clamp right to the backbone and it'll be a nice snug perfect fit. So let me get my burnishing tool here. And I'll slick that up. And if it's too wet, you won't see it slicking up or getting shiny. It just kind of flattens it out a little bit. So just back off, wait a couple more minutes until that starts to, there seems to be a real sweet spot when it starts to dry, but yet it's still moist, a little moist, that you get that nice burnish on it. And again, I'm not pressing hard at all. It's mostly friction more than anything. And you can see once you hit that sweet spot of where the moisture is in the leather, it doesn't really take a lot of effort to give that a nice smooth burnish and get that, put a little shine on there, make that edge hard. Alright, that's nice, slick around there, round, nice finished edge. So I think what I'm going to do next is I'm going to go ahead and grab me a couple of clamps, and I'll get me that one. Let me see if I can grab another hard edged. And this one looks pretty good. Let me just take this one since I've been punching on this one. Let's take this one and cut it and make a couple of strips that I can use just for clamping that down. And then I'll go ahead and take just like if I was casing it, except I'm going to put more water on it than if I was casing it for stamping or something like carving or something like that. And I'll actually put some water on the back side. So I'm letting that soak in, get that leather pliable. Oh yeah, it makes it nice and soft. And then when that dries with those clamps on there, that'll also kind of form that to that blade. Normally I'd wrap this with some saran wrap or something, but it already has quite a bit of oils on it, so I think it'll be just fine. Let's see. So let's go ahead and put this in here. I'm going to pull that spine of that knife back to the back edge and keep flattening this out and keep pushing that spine all the time, making sure that my lacing holes are matching up. So as I'm doing that, I'm also flattening this out and making sure that my lacing holes are matching up. And then I can go ahead and put one of my pieces of leather on the top of the spine, one on the back of the spine, and then squeeze that down on that knife blade. Now, I have never done this before, so this is all new to me, but it just makes sense that if I flatten that out on that spine now, it's just going to make it fit that much better, since I'm folding this over instead of cutting it in two pieces and stitching it together or lacing it on both sides. So I'm going to use these clamps, clamp that leather down on there. That's going to make these holes. These holes are all lined up perfectly. That means my edges are lined up perfectly. So I'm ready to let this sit and dry. Alright, so I've got my leather cut out from my pattern from the last episode. Got the knife blade in there. I've got my holes punched for my lacing. I kind of wet formed that blade in there since it folds over, and I've put a couple of pieces of leather on the outside of that and I clamped it down. So right now I've got some clamps on there I've got leather on the outside on both sides, and I've got the knife blade in there so that I get a nice flat backbone, and so the knife fits in there nice and snug. I'm not going to put any retaining strap or anything on this, so I don't want it falling out when I'm on the range. So I hope you enjoyed this. Please come back next episode. We'll move on to the next step, and we're going to add a few things to this that I think it's going to make it look really sharp. So like I always say, please like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.